Today's story isn't just about business and strategy, it's about two strangers, a desperate choice, and a marriage that was never meant to feel real until it did. Let's dive in. The leather chair let out a soft creak as Julian Hale leaned back, his ice jewel eyes fixed on the file in front of him. Behind him, the skyline of San Francisco stretched through the floor-to-ceiling windows, an empire of medical technology he had spent nearly a decade building. And now, it was being threatened by his grandfather's final wish. "You can't be serious," Julian said coldly, his voice tinged with restrained fury. Miles Carter, the family's longtime legal advisor, stood calmly at the edge of the sleek glass desk. "Unfortunately, I am. It's signed and notarized. The clause is valid. If you're not married before your 35th birthday, control of Hale Biotech will revert to the board of directors." Julian closed his eyes, his fists clenched. He had been leading the company since age 28, transforming it from a promising med-tech startup into a billion-dollar enterprise with products saving thousands of lives daily. And now, he might lose it all, simply because he was single? "Your grandfather believed in balance," Miles said gently. "He thought a great leader needed not just brilliance, but a partner." Julian gave a short, humorless laugh. "I'm running a biotech empire, not auditioning for a dating show." No one spoke further. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, a quiet reminder that time was moving, and his 35th birthday was just 3 months away. Elsewhere in the city, Lena Moore sat in her tiny Oakland apartment, hands wrapped around a mug of cold coffee, eyes fixed on the pile of unpaid hospital bills on the kitchen table. Her mother's anxious voice crackled through the speakerphone. They called again. This time they said, "We'll lose the house, sweetheart." Lena bit her lip. Her younger sister, Rose, had recently been diagnosed with a rare chronic illness. Insurance covered only a fraction. Lena's job at a small medical product design startup paid enough for rent, but clearly, it wasn't enough. "I'll figure something out," she whispered. Outside, dusk fell over the quiet streets of Oakland. Inside her, hope flickered dimly. Until a sudden knock at the door. Lena didn't know what to expect when she agreed to meet privately with a man she'd never heard of, Julian Hale. All she knew was that he was the CEO of a massive medical tech company, and that a man named Miles had shown up at her doorstep the day before with a proposition that sounded like something out of a movie. A marriage, with a contract, with terms, with money, a lot of it. She'd nearly turned it down on the spot, convinced it was a cruel joke. But when she saw the contract draft, erasing her sister's hospital debt, securing her mother's house, even offering support for her career, she couldn't not listen. The meeting took place in a quiet cafe in the Mission District. Julian arrived on time, dressed in a custom gray suit. He was tall, sharp-eyed, and carried an air of command that made it hard to breathe near him. "Thank you for coming," he said, calm and composed. Lena nodded, trying not to let her hands shake as she held her coffee. "I came because your offer sounds unusual." "Because it is," Julian said plainly. "I won't pretend this is about love. This is a business arrangement, a minimum 1-year marriage. You'll receive all necessary financial support in exchange for a public relationship. Appearances at events, a few press photos. When it ends, we part ways peacefully." Lena stared at him, unblinking. "And why me?" He paused for a moment before answering. "Miles said you're educated, grounded, and discreet. Most importantly, you need help, and I need someone I can trust." No deception, no charm, just facts. And yet, in that moment, as Lena met his eyes, she saw something unexpected. Not arrogance or control, but a flicker of loneliness. "Give me one dinner," she said. "I'll hear you out. But I'm not for sale." Julian blinked, then gave a small nod. 7 o'clock, Leclerc Restaurant. You'll choose the wine." Dinner at Leclerc was supposed to be a business negotiation, but from the candlelight reflected in Julian's icy blue eyes to the precise, curious way he asked questions, Lena knew this wasn't just about a contract. He didn't smile much. He didn't charm. Instead, he offered cold honesty, and somehow that made her feel safe. "We'll have boundaries," Julian had said. "No invading personal space. No emotions. no expectations after the contract ends. Lena had agreed. Her family needed saving. But deep inside, a quiet voice asked, why her, among so many easier choices? 3 weeks later, the wedding happened. Quiet, no guests, just signatures in a law office, a handshake, a simple ring. And just like that, she became Lena Hale. The new life began like a perfectly staged play. She moved into his penthouse, a place so pristine and cold it barely felt lived in. Julian kept his word, kept his distance. Yet now and then, Lena caught him watching her from behind the morning paper, his eyes no longer unreadable. Every time they stepped out for the cameras, Julian's hand would find hers just as the flashes burst. He would lean in close and whisper, "We're being watched." But his voice was softer than she'd expected. Julian didn't treat her like an accessory. Instead, he offered her a real role at Hale Biotech, product development consultant. Lena doubted it at first, but after a few meetings she realized her colleagues were actually listening. At a key strategy session, Lena proposed redesigning the glucose monitor for pediatric patients. When the room fell into surprised silence, Julian simply nodded. After the meeting, he said, "I like the way you make people listen. Not many can do that." Amid all the pretending, something real began to grow. One night, Julian knocked on her door after midnight, just to ask about a new product formula. His eyes looked uncertain, as if he needed a reason to stand in front of her. Then, in Paris, during a business trip, rain trapped them beneath the autumn sky. Without a word, Julian took off his coat and placed it around her shoulders. "You should keep it," Lena said. "You're shivering," he replied, eyes locked on hers. In that moment, no one was watching, no cameras, no board members, just two people standing on a rain-slicked boulevard. And something quietly shifted. Paris had felt like a fleeting dream, warm, fragile, and unreal. But once they returned to San Francisco, reality crashed down like a cold slap. The first article appeared 3 days later. Front page, CEO Julian Hale marries unknown medical designer. Love or power move? Julian said nothing when he read the headline. He simply handed the paper to Lena with a tired look. "The press always knows how to ruin anything beautiful," he murmured. But that was only the beginning. At Hale Biotech's annual charity gala, Lena met Evelyn Stratton, Julian's ex, and the daughter of a major board member. She arrived in a black gown fit for a performance and didn't miss the chance to casually bring up their shared past. "We were engaged once, did you know?" Evelyn said, lightly swirling her champagne, "until he decided the company was more important than love. Now, he's married to you." "In a matter of weeks, that was fast." Lena smiled, keeping her tone even. "Julian doesn't talk much about the past, perhaps because the present keeps him busy enough." Evelyn tilted her head, eyes sharp. "I just hope you know, he's not great with emotions. Remember when I told him he'd never truly love anyone? He didn't deny it." That night, Lena asked Julian, not out of jealousy, but because she needed truth, "Did you ever love Evelyn?" Julian was silent for so long, Lena thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, "I thought I did, but now, I'm not sure I've ever known what love really is." The words, though not aimed at her, chilled her just the same. In the days that followed, rumors swirled that she was a cover, that their marriage was nothing but a boardroom tactic, that she was just a name on a contract. Then came the emergency board meeting, called by none other than Evelyn's father, Mr. Stratton. He demanded Julian prove that his marriage wasn't clouding his judgment as CEO. Lena stood silently beside Julian, her fingers gripping his under the table. But Julian, the man who always seemed in control, looked utterly lost. On the drive home, neither spoke. Streetlights passed in flashes, slicing across their faces like silent truths. "Do you regret it?" Lena asked quietly. "This marriage?" Julian turned his face to the window. "I don't know." Lena didn't move from the living room when Julian walked in. It was already dark. The city lights cast their shadows on the tall windows. Two strangers standing in the same frame of cold silence. "The board meeting is tomorrow," he said softly, taking off his coat. His voice was calm, but the weight on his shoulders showed in the way the fabric hung. "You seem composed," Lena replied, still facing the glass. "You always are, always in control." Julian said nothing. The ticking clock echoed through the room, marking the distance between two hearts no longer beating in sync. "Evelyn said you don't know how to love," Lena said, "and when I asked, you didn't deny it." This time, Julian turned to face her. His eyes were no longer cold, but tired, torn. "You want the truth?" he asked. Lena nodded slowly. Julian stepped toward her, stopping just short. "I've lived my whole life on a schedule. Every step, every decision, calculated, no room for emotions. Emotions make people weak." He paused, breathing in deeply. "Then you showed up, not part of the plan, not in the formula. You broke everything, so gently, and that terrified me." Lena didn't move. "I didn't deny Eveline because part of me believed she was right, that I wasn't capable of love, that everything I touched became transactional." He took another step. "But then there was that night in Paris. The way you looked at that child in the clinic. The way you looked at me, as if I was just a man, not a title." Now he was standing right in front of her. "Lena, I love you," he said, barely above a whisper. "Not in some grand, scripted way. Not because of the contract, not because of any clause, just because you made me want to be better. Because you made me believe love might actually be real." Lena felt her chest tighten. She had waited for this confession through countless sleepless nights, and now it came, simple, quiet, and more real than anything else. She smiled, didn't speak, just stepped forward and placed her hand against his cheek. And Julian, the man who never wavered, closed his eyes. As if for the first time, he allowed himself to feel peace. The next morning, the 48th floor boardroom of Hale Biotech glowed in the early sunlight, but the air inside was as cold as winter. The board members sat upright, papers neatly stacked before them. Mr. Stratton, glasses perched on his nose, flipped through his files deliberately. Julian entered right on time, calm on the outside, eyes sharp as glass. Lena walked beside him, no longer hiding behind him, but holding her head high. An equal. The meeting opened with routine questions about revenue and expansion. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Has the CEO's personal relationship affected his professional judgment? Julian stood without notes. "Yes, I'm married to Lena Moore," he began, voice steady. "But she isn't just a personal hire. She's the one who proposed the strategy that expanded our pediatric market. The R&D team trusts her, and more than that, I trust her. As a partner, in every sense of the word." Stratton prepared to object, but Lena rose before he could speak. "And I no longer need anyone to defend me," she said clearly. "I'm not here because of my last name. I'm here because I've proven myself, through work and through results." The tone in the room shifted. One board member smiled, another nodded. In the end, the vote passed. Julian retained his role as CEO. Lena was officially appointed as Global Director of Product Strategy. As the room emptied, Julian turned to her, voice quieter now. "I used to think I needed someone to help me keep this company, but now I know what I really needed was you." Lena squeezed his hand, smiling softly. "And I'm here, not because of a contract, not out of obligation, but because I choose to stay." Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Hale Biotech's upper floor office, casting a soft glow over folders and scattered product samples. Lena sat quietly, her hair pulled back, a warm coffee in hand, eyes on her screen. 1 year. 1 year since they signed a marriage contract built on caution and logic. 1 year since she stepped into Julian's world as nothing more than a wife on paper. Now, she was the creative director of product design, respected by the entire R&D team. And most of all, she was the woman Julian Hale loved. The door creaked open. Julian stepped in, no suit today, just a crisp white shirt with sleeves rolled up. He smiled and placed a thick envelope on the desk. "This is a copy of our original marriage contract," he said. "Right on time, 1 year later." Lena looked at the envelope, then up at him. "Do you want me to sign it?" Julian shook his head. "No, I keep it to remind myself how far we've come, from signatures on paper to moments that can't be written down." She stood, wrapped her arms around his waist, and rested her head against his chest. "I used to think love was a luxury, but you've made it feel like the most ordinary thing in every beautiful day." He leaned down, whispering by her ear, "And you are the most real thing I've ever had." Outside, San Francisco glowed under the sun. Inside, there was no contract, just two people choosing each other every day. On a breezy March morning, the scent of sea salt and blooming flowers drifted in from the San Francisco Bay. Lena walked slowly through the small rooftop garden, one hand resting gently over her rounded belly, cradling two heartbeats she never imagined would be hers. Julian stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder and whispered, "Boy or girl? What's your guess?" Lena giggled. "Both. I just got back from the scan. Twins. A boy and a girl." Julian froze, then broke into laughter, a sound she rarely heard from him, one free of tension and perfectly full of joy. "We did it," he said, voice hoarse with emotion. "No," Lena corrected softly. "We're just beginning. This time, no contracts, no conditions, just love and family." Together, they chose names. Julian wanted to honor his grandfather, the man who had unknowingly set their story in motion. Lena named their daughter Hope, because she carried every ounce of what they had fought through. Months later, in a room bathed in golden afternoon light, the cries of new life filled the air. Twice, Julian held his daughter in his arms while Lena cradled their sleeping son. Their eyes met across the small space, and nothing needed to be said. This wasn't the ending of their story. It was the beginning of something truer than any contract ever written. They had become a family. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in unexpected love. Leave a comment below. Would you ever say yes to a love that starts with a contract? Until next time, keep believing in the magic of second chances. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If you've ever believed in love that starts from the most unexpected places, you're not alone.